prosecutor and say, look, I got XYZ, I want to go ahead and prosecute this case, which rarely happens with probable cause arrest. Most cases at the federal level are done by indictment, as you guys are seeing here. And I can explain the whole process if you want me to, but regardless, maybe in this case was indicted. So that means that this agent went in.
Give us some new information I didn't know. So on a
this is extensive. So stop me wherever you need to.
Yeah, okay. So you just explain what most people, because again, when we hear the feds, it's like the book, right? So like that's just super different, right? So for example, yeah, if a local police pulls you over with an turn and they have probable cause, they could just arrest you and hit you with the charges when they get to the station, whatever the case, right? But you're saying that the feds don't do that.
No, they don't. And the reason why, right? So I'll give you guys a perfect example. When I was on the Southwest border, right? Someone comes in, tries to smuggle drugs through the port, Customs and Border Protection arrests them, right? Detain them because they got the drugs right then and there. They call HSI, I show up, I seize the drugs, I take the individual, I call the prosecutor and say, look, we got him here with 10 kilos of coke at the bridge. He's confessed, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to write up a criminal complaint. Are you guys going to accept prosecution? Yeah, we got you. Boom. Okay. So I take him, drop him off at the jail, go back to the office, write up my criminal complaint, send it to the AUSA. He sends it to the judge. Next morning, I'm there, forward to it, sign it, blah, blah, blah. And then, that was a probable cause arrest in that case. That doesn't happen often at the federal level. Most of the time, you're doing a long-term investigation. You're working hand-in-hand with the prosecutor, which is why they're close, I explained before, and you're building up a case that might take months, if not years, to build up. And on top of that, you had to go to the AUSA prior and say, look, I'm doing this investigation. This is the target. This is the organization. Blah, blah, blah. You got to sell it because AUSAs have a lot of discretion which cases they take and which cases they don't take. They might say, hey, that's not good enough for us. Go ahead and take it to the state. We're not going to go ahead and take that. So probable cause arrests aren't as common at the federal level. You typically have to go through an AUSA and get indicted after a long-term investigation. That's why the feds don't have the same arrest authority as a state and locals do. State and locals can arrest you all day if they see you with drugs or they see that you're drunk or disorderly conduct, whatever the fuck it may be. They have a lot more power with probable cause arrest because district attorney's offices are a lot more flexible than the United States attorney's office. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. By the way, you're giving us information that is not known because I think a lot of times when law enforcement, obviously we hear about 97% of conviction rate when it comes to the feds, but we think pretty much law enforcement is law enforcement. We're just thinking that's the prosecutors. Okay, cool.
I see why. That's precisely why they win so many cases because the AUSAs have such discretion. They don't take cases unless, put it this way, AUSA is not going to indict you 99% of the time unless they're not sure they're going to win a trial. Like when I used to come in with my grand jury packet to indict somebody, it wasn't just for indictment of probable cause. The AUSA was like, I need enough where if we went to trial tomorrow, we would win. So the feds don't mess around with that because they have such discretion. That's why they have such high conviction rates is because when they indict you, they're already ready for trial, ready to go. So Diddy's finished. Yeah, dude, it's a wrap.
Okay. So let's, again, we don't know for sure, but again, this is the best source anyone could have. Thank you, Martin.
This is my office. I worked out of the Miami field office, but the New York office, I'm very familiar with how they work. This is my agency, so I know exactly how they work. This was, a human trafficking 15
There's
case.
Exclusive right here.
Okay,
Exclusive.
So here's the question, Matt. So you would kind of walk through. Okay, you were casing, and at what point do you pass it over to the U.S. Attorney's Office? And so how much of the work here is there like an agent or maybe a couple of agents doing versus, okay, this is when we definitely know this is in the U.S. Attorney's hands and they're making these. So you break it down from at least externally what we've seen.
Oh, this is how I think. This is what I, speculate the investigation started to some degree. When Cassie first came out and said that she was being abused by him, etc., right? And they might have got tips and everything else like this from before, right, from the tip line or whatever. What I think more than likely happened was they started talking to a couple of people, going out, doing a couple of knocking talks. Hey, this seems a little weird. These women keep coming forward and complaining about, nefarious sexual activity with Diddy from dating back from the 90s or whatever. This is a little weird. And at that point, especially if you're dealing with someone high profile, after the second or third or fourth interview where you might have a good witness or two, you're going to the United States Attorney's Office early on, right? And you're saying, look, This is the target. This is who he is. This is what we think we can build, etc. We talk to these people, whatever. And I think in a case like this, they more than likely had the U.S. Attorney's Office here early on. And I've always said this: the feds in the United States Attorney's Office, right? They like clout. They like the ability to prosecute high-profile individuals. It's going to hit the news. It's going to be big, a big W for them, a big press release. So I'm assuming once they figured out who the guy was, right, Diddy, they probably were working with the United States Attorney's Office fairly early on this, is what I predict.
Okay.
Given the nature of who the individual was. And also keep in mind, there was a successful prosecution with R. Kelly prior to this. So, and some of, if I'm not mistaken, some of the AUSAs that were on that case were also involved in this R. Kelly case.
All right,
or involved in this Diddy case that were involved in that R. Kelly case. Sorry.
So let me ask you this. I guess you could expound on this. I'd love to hear you explain that. But in following up to that, I also want you to, answer the question. Okay, if you mentioned, racketeering.
Yeah.
And usually when people are in a racket, it's more than one. It's just not singular individual. And maybe I'm wrong, but do you believe that this indictment solely falls on Sean Diddy Combs, or maybe there are 3, 4, 5, 6 dozen other people, maybe not charged with everything, but those are kind of ancillary people who the prosecutors can try to dance along maybe in the trial and say, hey, these were the people that were doing his bidding, but he was making a call. What do you?
Yeah, so the reason why they're going to have to use the racketeering statute, right, is because a lot of these crimes happened a long time ago, right? Like some of these crimes are beyond the statute of limitations. So in order for the prosecutors to kind of bring in some of those allegations that happened in the 90s, maybe even the 80s or early 2000s or whatever, they're going to need to go ahead and prove that he was committing these crimes for a period of time, right? Racketeering activity, right? And the criminal organization is ongoing, or the criminal enterprise is ongoing. So that is why they're going to have to do this under the auspice of RICO, so that they can go ahead and say, look, we're going to bring in all these other crimes, right, that were done decades ago, because he's been doing it for a while. So sex trafficking is considered a crime that falls under the RICO Act, right? There's drug trafficking, there's violence, witness intimidation, there's extortion, all these different types of crimes that they typically had there historically to go after organized crime like the mafia, whatever. As long as they can prove that he's still committing these crimes to some degree, they can bring in all those allegations from prior, but they need to do it under the RICO statute to be able to bring them in, so they get around the whole statute of limitations program.
So sex trafficking, and I've heard of us YouTubers on here, obviously 99.9, and you're obviously the 0.1% that has worked along for you. Like, yeah. We're either like ghetto lawyers, and we're going off what we don't know from the our or just kind of like looking at these things a lot. Could you explain sex trafficking? Because I've heard, like, for example, like Wacko said, well, if you fly a girl out and you fuck her, and if she alleges that there is an abuse there, well, person crossed state lines, this and third, sex trafficking. And I'm like, damn, that's kind of like a very loose and broad, interpretation of what sex trafficking is. What is sex trafficking? And where would a federal authority start to look at it? So I'm gonna just kind of give the more practical agent side of it, right? So the thing with sex trafficking, and this is very contrary to what people think, it's not as common as people think it is, right? What people always conflate sex trafficking with is human smuggling, bringing in illegal aliens into the United States for some or a fee. Those individuals are brought into the United States. Their families are being extorted, etc. That's human smuggling. Now, does it lead to human trafficking later on when they get into the United States and they're forced to work jobs or whatever it may be? Of course. But people often conflate human smuggling with human trafficking, which are two completely different crimes. One is, AUSC 1324. The other one is a far more serious crime that's 18 USC, right, which is the criminal code versus the immigration code. So that's number one. Number two, as far as sex trafficking goes, it's actually
fairly hard to prove. A lot of the times when people think that they got a sex trafficking case, and I know this because I've been on so many of these different raids, is what ends up happening is you bust the prostitution ring, right? You thought, oh yeah, we had these girls are being trafficked, whatever. You talk to them and they all love their pimp. They don't want to cooperate. They don't want to say that they were being held or whatever. You know, some of them are lying to protect them. Some of them were trafficked or whatever. But the point is that it's very difficult to get witnesses because sometimes they don't want to necessarily cooperate. So what ends up happening is you just end up getting everyone arrested for solicitation charges, right? Ends up being just a prostitution ring bust. Now, the way to get around that though, right, which is how the feds come in a lot of the times, is if the girls are under 18, it's an automatic human trafficking.
Wow.
Automatic. Why? So that's where they're going to get them. Is some of these girls, from what I understand, were under 18 at the time when Diddy was messing with them and bringing them around in different states.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're going to get them. I mean, I'll have to look at the indictment to see, but this is my prediction.
Oh, okay, let me interject. So one of the particular civil cases that he had, that there was a young woman who was 17, supposedly, you know, she met someone that worked for his label. That person said, hey, I think Diddy would like it. They called Diddy. Diddy spoke to the girl, spoke to the person, and then within a matter of hours, the girl got on a private jet to fly to Diddy and allegedly was around him. By the way, this girl, who said, here, I'll send you a link if you want to show it on your wrist. Yeah, please. Or you can even Google 17-year-old Diddy. There's multiple articles about it. The face is blurred out. He was seen sitting on his lap. Okay, there's a New York Post. I'll post it in the text.
Okay, yeah, because Bill's on the computer, so you can do it.
There's a New York Post and it says, someone getting claims he's a drug and gang R-word. 17-year-old in the new suit. There's photos of this girl sitting on his lap. Obviously, he's not shown for obvious reasons. She was 17 at the time. Her lawsuit against him said she was gang R-worded. But what's also very important is she was 17. Here's the important part. I think she was in, I believe, let me make sure, Detroit, I believe. And then he was either in New York and yes, the woman said she met Pierre, who was an executive at Bad Boys Entertainment. So she met one of his workers in Detroit at a lounge. And then essentially he called Sean Diddy Combs on the phone and convinced the team to fly to New York City. Before leaving the lounge, they said that the worker took her to the bathroom where he smoked crack with her and apparently had her have sex with him first. Then put her in a private jet from Pontiac, Michigan. She landed in Teterboro, New Jersey, which is where Jay-Z and everybody else. Everybody who got a private jet goes to New York, stays in Jersey and Teterboro. And yeah, they drove to a studio, and she has pictures to prove she's with them. Would that be considered as sex trafficking?
Yeah, that's a cut and dry human trafficking right there at the federal level because she's not 18. He moved her in between states that affects interstate commerce. So that's where they're going to get them. And and I know some of the audience here might be shocked by me saying that human trafficking isn't as prevalent as people think, but it really isn't. It's really the human smuggling that is the extremely common thing that people tend to conflate because they're two completely different crimes. But the big way, and I know this from being on human trafficking task forces and working with these guys closely, a lot of the times when they do these busts, what ends up happening is it's prostitution ring and they don't want to cooperate against a pimp. They're not really being abused. They're doing it willingly and they're of age. However, if they catch a girl there that's underage, then it warps into human trafficking automatically because that woman can't consent. That's how they get the nexus. If the girl lied about her age, does that matter? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So if she's 17 and she was being, and there was a pimp and she was being prostituted, it's automatic human trafficking charge. And the feds will take that almost always. And the two biggest agencies that investigate human trafficking are Homeland Security Investigation, HSI, and the FBI.
Okay, also, what about this? In different states, there are different age limits.
Yeah.
So on a state level, I believe, and we could Google it for New York age of consent.
317.
That is 17. Now that's statewide. Obviously, the national age of consent federally is 18. Could Diddy have an argument to say, well, she came here willingly, and the age of consent in New York is 17?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's legal if he doesn't try it. But they're gonna say, hey, literally it's 18. So we'll see what happens. And I think that's where he's gonna have to pay some fencing to the big bucks to make that argument in court for him.
Wow. Okay. So all right, we get sex trafficking. So I think everybody who's spoken about this, and I gotta get you the Bradford Code. Like I'm telling you, he's an invaluable mind. Everything he's predicting when it comes to these decisions. I think you guys are like, anyway.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, wait, she came from Michigan, you said, right?
Yes, it can be from Michigan.
Is that a 16 in Michigan? Okay. All right. I was just looking to see what the age of consent is in Michigan. But sorry, what was the next thing you wanted to do?
Okay. So I guess we're looking at the litany of charges. It appears that sex trafficking is going to be on, right? There's been rumors about the 1999 shooting, club shooting. That's the movie was shot with. But New York State did not charge Diddy with that crime. That particular situation, we're hearing about maybe other, and I said this earlier, but I want to get the take on it. Remember the first person who was arrested that was supposedly the drug dealer. And we hear a lot of drugs. Do we see maybe some drug charges kind of mixed into it? Kind of gives some color. No, of course, I'm not telling it kind of makes it seem like, hey, it's not only sex trafficking, it's a drug-fueled environment. And then maybe you could add some violence in it, either
to pad up the racketeering, right? So when you're hitting people with RICO, right? Like you have certain crimes in there that you want to show to establish that it's a criminal enterprise and you're committing crimes in furtherance of the organization. So, like I said, there's a couple different crimes that fall under the racketeering, right? Vehicle theft, extortion, murder, kidnapping, drug trafficking, etc. So what I predict is, right, we don't know the indictment yet. We'll see it tomorrow, probably when it's sealed, when you go to the front of the judge. They might put that in there to kind of add that this is a component to the criminal organization, because some of these women that are victims, complain and say, oh yeah, I was under the influence of drugs, they were readily available, etc. So they can use that to kind of substantiate and pop up this RICO charge, because the reason why they're using the RICO is because the RICO allows them to bring in all these other cases in that might have been kind of fallen by the wayside due to statute of limitations. RICO allows them to bring it back in. It's kind of like the glue that holds everything together, if that makes sense.
Do you think that there is this, sexual assault?
Yeah, I mean for sure, because the thing is that they've had this grand jury convened for a very long time. I remember reading about this originally, like almost 2 to 3 months ago, that they started doing these grand jury things. So that tells me the fact that they're indicting him now.
Is that like again? We have no idea about federal grand juries. It feels like they're presenting this case for 2 months.
Okay, let me explain how grand jury works. So, because a lot of people, so the grand jury is nothing more than a group of your peers that sit in a room and deliberate on cases based on probable cause, right? So, not to be confused with a trial jury, right, where it's like 12, 6 or 12, whatever they may be. So a grand jury, right, the AUSA could be, then they typically serve for, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. And they'll sit there and the grand jury typically convenes once a week, depending on how busy the United States Attorney's Office is, how often they're indicting cases, whatever it may be. So what ends up happening is the AUSA comes in with their case agent, and the AUSA asks the case agent questions, right? And the case agent presents evidence to the case. Now, keep in mind, I want to make this very clear. It's just to establish probable cause, guys. Probable cause is not that high of a threshold, right? But like I said before, when you're indicting, the AUSA pretty much is ready to go to trial. So it's probable cause just to get the indictment, but obviously the AUSA is looking long term to win a trial. So you go in there, and I've testified literally hundreds of times. You go in there, they sit you down, they swear you in, and they ask you questions, right? They usually ask you questions on the case, you explain the case, then they open it up for a Q&A with the grand jury to ask you questions. You answer any questions in there about the case, anything that wasn't clear. You walk out the grand jury room, you and the AUSA, you give them some time to deliberate, depending on how complex the case is, that will dictate how long it takes them to deliberate, and then you get something called a true bill of indictment after the fact. That true bill of indictment is filed with the clerk, and then you go ahead and you get an arrest warrant from the judge. And that's to answer your question that you mentioned before, hey, why did it come up tonight versus tomorrow? What I'm assuming is, since they had the grand jury convening, right, and they knew that he was going to be indicted today, I guarantee they had probably agents watching him the whole time, and they saw he was at the hotel lobby. They're like, bro, we got eyes on him. Okay, it's safe to do it. We technically have an arrest warrant for him now, and in the arrest warrant, if you look at any federal arrest warrant, it says at the bottom, you are hereby commanded to arrest XYZ, right? So if you got him in plain sight and it's safe to effect the arrest, you kind of have to arrest him because you've been commanded by a magistrate judge now that you have that arrest warrant, or a district judge, depending on whatever it is. But regardless, you got an arrest warrant from the judge. So they probably had eyes on him the whole time. They saw he was in the hotel lobby. Arrest warrant signed by the judge. They just picked him up right then and there. That's what I predict why they picked him up this evening.
So you're not thinking that maybe, even though he's asked to be cooperative, you don't think that maybe, I don't know, he was like, oh, I gotta go back to Miami, and maybe like he hit like his plane guy, like, hey, let's go back to Miami, because I don't know if he would know when the went down, and they were like, fuck, we're not gonna wait till he gets on another.
That could have been a reason too. I mean, I'm thinking, typically the most simple answer tends to be the answer. What I'm predicting is they probably have been they've had him under surveillance for a few days now, especially knowing that the grand jury convened him and was going to indict him today, kind of to see if he was going to run or see what would happen. And at this point, with the way
phone tapped or no?
What was that?
You think that maybe they had his phone tapped? Like, what's the surveillance? Like, I use 6ix9ine as an example. Basically, like 6ix9ine said, like, I remember he explained to me that he said, yo, I knew what it was every time I went outside. There was always a car that drove right by, and it was always unmarked. There was always like this one car up there. Like it was basically, he said he kind of knew, but not really knew that he was definitely heavily surveilled. And also, essentially his phone were also being tapped as well. Do you think they tapped his phone just for this purpose, or no?
No, I'm pretty certain that because here's the thing. So another common misconception, people think that tapping a phone is very easy. Getting a federal Title III, which is what it means to get live communication, guys, is extremely fucking difficult. And I can tell you guys, it's because I've written an affidavit and gotten a Title III before. It's very fucking hard to get one because here's the thing. When you write search warrants, right, a phone tap is the most intrusive, almost one of the most intrusive law enforcement techniques that you can use. So typically, the more intrusive the search, the more probable cause you need to conduct that search. And I've said this, I'll say it again. You need more probable cause to listen to someone's phone than to fucking arrest them. And the reason why is because you're not only infringing on that individual's, privacy, right, or violating the Fourth Amendment to a degree while you're doing it legally. You're also listening into the private conversations of other individuals that may or may not be subjects of investigation. So when you're listening to their phone, it's one of the highest standards of getting a search warrant because you're listening in, and it has to go through different people. A district judge has to sign it. It needs to go through something called OEO at the U.S. Department of Justice. It's very difficult to get a wiretap. So what I predict is, since this crime, a crime of things that occurred years ago, it wouldn't make sense. And I actually doubt that they would have the probable cause required to get a phone line tapped to actually listen to stuff, because I don't know if you want me to go into this, but to get an actual Title III, you need 30 phone calls, you need informants, you need a pen register, which this is all, really want me to go into this how a phone tap works, I can, but because I've done it, but I'm 99% sure that they didn't do any Title III intercepts on this investigation because this is a more historical investigation where you're interviewing witnesses of crimes that occurred in the past, which is why they're using the racketeering statute because they're trying to bring in these crimes to kind of save them from statute of limitations problems. Let's say this. What they could have been doing though, instead of a phone tap, right? Because I want to be very clear here. There's different ways to exploit telephones from a law enforcement perspective, right? There's different thresholds. There's something called a ping warrant, right? Which I've done this a million times when I would follow drug traffickers around, where you're able to track the phone, right, and get an update. It's up to you how you want to do it, but you can get it 30 minutes, hour, etc. And you basically know where the guy is going, right? Now, with that said, they would have to prove that the telephone and his travel was involved in some type of criminal activity. So for drug traffickers, it's easy because you could be like, look, this guy's going to be having a pattern of behavior where he's going to be picking up drugs from individuals and meeting at stash houses, etc. We need to know where he's going, right? Or you can use this to put a tracker on a vehicle too, where hey, he's involved in this type of crime. I need to know where he's going, etc. So they could do what's called a ping warrant on him to know where he's going at all times. That might not be needed though, because obviously his defense team was cooperating with him. That could be a play as well, but I kind of doubt it in this situation since he was cooperating. Then you have something called a pen register. And a pen register, aka a trap and trace, is where they basically will get every single person calling you, right, and every single phone that you make. Now it doesn't show the context of the conversation or what's being said, but it just shows frequency. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm watching a drug trafficker and I know that he's involved in dealing cocaine or methamphetamine, whatever, right? And I see that he calls this one certain phone number the most. I'm going to do a subpoena on that phone number, identify who that individual is, and I find out, this guy's a street for trafficking drugs, boom. And I start to identify the organization, right? And then that's how you kind of build it out. That's another way to exploit the telephones. I doubt that they're doing that though, because this is a drug trafficking investigation. He's not actively involved in the crimes anymore. If anything, he's probably trying to avoid it. So I doubt that they did a pen register too. I think in this case, they just had good old-fashioned, eye surveillance. His legal team was cooperating, and then this is a historical case anyway. So this is strictly based on witness testimony. It's going to be a witness testimony heavy investigation.
Okay. Now, again, you're the perfect. He's also like kind of analyzes things.
Yeah.
So in the news, one of the last things, and you tell me where you think things came from, U.S. Attorney's Office or the grand jury. The subpoena sent out by any film that had to do with whereabouts and also activity of not only Diddy, athletes. Does that number one? I want you to analyze that. But second of all, does that make it that joint be even maybe that doesn't style it? Oh, that's
okay. So I can answer that. Another thing I want to say, some people are saying they always have the phones. I also want to be clear here that a Title III wire intercept of phones through the regular court system is much different than a FISA wiretap, where you're basically doing on national security grounds. If you're doing a FISA phone tap, obviously the threshold is not as high as a regular Title III because you have national security implications, so you're able to get it much easier. So if you're a spy or trying to do anything against the United States that affects national security, they're going to be able to wiretap your phone way easier. Now, to answer your question as far as subpoenas go, so here's the thing. So every agency operates differently here, but when it comes to agency has something called admin subpoena power. And what that means is you can go into a business or you can go ahead and start a phone company or whatever it may be, and you can say, look, I need information on XYZ, and you start them a subpoena on, maybe it's an immigration case, a customs case, a drug case, whatever it may be. They have different statutes they can use to gain information via subpoena. Then you also have something called a grand jury subpoena. I'll give you an example of what the two mean, right? So let's say I have a target of investigation and they have a Google account, right? They want to figure out who is the subscriber to that Google account. I send an administrative subpoena to Google to tell me who the user is on that account. Google will furnish me the information because I gave them a legal document. However, after 30, 60, 90 days, they will notify the subscriber, look, the feds asked us about your account. And they can go ahead and disclose that to their customer, right? Banks do this, phone companies will do this, etc. Right? Now, if I hand a grand jury subpoena, now they can't say shit, right? So think of it as a grand jury subpoena as a more powerful way to get information, right? It's a little bit more of a pain in the ass to get one, but you typically want to use grand jury subpoenas, especially for banks, because if you give a bank an admin subpoena, some of them might not honor it, or they'll say, well, we're going to notify our account holder like within a month or whatever. Obviously, you don't want them to find out that they're the subject of investigation. So you want to give them a grand jury subpoena. Admin subpoenas are typically reserved for phone companies. Phone companies typically will, they won't tell the subscriber. They'll just give you the phone number, who it belongs to, address, that type of shit, basic stuff. So, with all that said, the fact that we know that there were subpoenas sent to these hotels leads me to believe that they probably served them with administrative subpoenas, right? Which is, they work, but you deal with the issues where it's not necessarily.
What you guys can't turn the phone on. What you make sure to deliver 10 years strong. That chick's going all the way.
On his face.
I'll look at you.
For admin, no, and only some agencies have admin subpoena power. And I know DEA has it, HSI has it, FBI has it. I don't think ATF has it. They got to do everything through grand jury subpoena. It depends on the agency and their administrative powers. But yeah, giving an admin subpoena will get you the information sometimes, but you have to deal with the risk. As a case agent, you got to make this decision. It's more of a pain in the ass to get a grand jury subpoena, but you'll be protected. However, you can do an admin subpoena and get it quickly, and maybe potentially deal with them disclosing it to the subscriber. That's why I would use admin subpoenas for phone stuff. I would never use it for anything else because a company like a hotel could potentially disclose that after a period of time.
Okay, so are you? I guess so. So it was interesting that Daphne was there. Like, that you think that means that she's either the witness or the person being this.
And what's this? You said that's Diddy, like not Diddy. It's Big Mama, 50 Cent, Big Mama, right?
Yeah.
And she used to have a relationship with Diddy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. Let me I want to read the exact thing that we saw. Here we go. So this is, by the way, this was 8/31. This is obviously August 31st. Where I want to read you this thing because the federal court is investigating Diddy to possibly get an indictment against the music mogul the law, issuing a new grand jury subpoena related to a hotel in Florida. According to new legal docs, it's a by Tuesday, because you obviously have to know they have a source.
It's a grand jury subpoena, okay.
Yeah. TMZ's person also figured out that Diddy's in custody. No, they have a source in Southern District. The federal prosecutors from the Southern District of New York got a subpoena requiring the fancy Miami hotel to cooperate documents and other evidence related to Diddy. Here's where we get a little further. Diddy and his ex, Daphne Joy, or considered Big Mama, are both named in the subpoena. The subpoena calls for the hotel to hand over preservation records involving Diddy and Daphne. Other associates of Bad Boy Entertainment CEO. Subpoena names the period of January 1st, 2008 to present, asking for check-ins and check-out dates, room numbers, guest preferences, requests, billing information, also loose. Federal prosecutors are also requesting emails and mailing address, phone numbers, along with proof of payments such as cash. Okay. They also ask for computer IP address, logins of individuals, as well as copies of their identification. If this information was more, the feds required about surveillance footage at the hotel. The use of those footage to affect the it looked like, so it looks like the authorities are so hard at work.
Yeah, so I can answer that. That's just like, that's what you would call like kind of a catch-all subpoena, where you're not just going to subpoena every room that was under his name, but you're going to subpoena all the rooms that were under associates, girlfriends, employees, etc., so that you kind of have a broad scale and you know exactly every room that was rented. And the reason why they probably are doing that is because they probably heard testimony from one of the witnesses that said, "Hey, I was assaulted at this hotel during this time, blah blah blah." So they're like, "All right, cool. For us to cover our bases, so we can corroborate, right?" Because the thing is, with witness testimony is we need to be able to corroborate with actual real facts. Right? So one of the witnesses says, "Hey, I was sexually assaulted at this hotel on this, on or about this day or month or year," right? What they're going to do is they're going to say, "Okay, cool, we need to be able to confirm that." So they're going to go back at those hotel records, show that he did indeed have a room at this hotel at that specified period of time. And what that will do is that will up that witness's credibility in court. So your whole job, whenever you're an agent, right, and you're doing these cases, is when you have a witness, you need to be able to independently corroborate everything they tell you through outside pieces of evidence that kind of stand on their own. And hotel reservations is a great way to do that. That's why I'm assuming they probably went ahead and did the grand jury subpoenas, and they did it through a grand jury subpoena to make sure that it can come into court. So I think that putting her on the grand jury subpoenas is just to make sure that they get everything and they don't miss any rooms. Because if nefarious activity did occur, right? If he has half a brain, he's not going to put it under his name. He's going to put it under the people that work for him or people that were with him.
Well, okay, so I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, and may not be able to answer the fact. Instead of use that before the sex work. Horses says a little sex work. He's safe.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Again, going off what Bradford Cohen said, it feels like maybe past to leak that footage of Diddy maybe potentially feds could look at, we're to be like, "Hey, well, okay, I know he was abusive to you, but looked like you were the person who was hitting up all the escorts and flying the girls in. Diddy didn't do that, you did that. So maybe you're a co-conspirator." When you hear after Joy's name being mentioned, is it possible that there could be maybe women, maybe managers, maybe assistants that get charged along with Diddy, or at least were investigated to say, "Hey, this guy didn't do about it. You guys help. You put the girls in your room. They weren't staying in Diddy's room. They stayed under your name, in rooms under your name." Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to use that as a bargaining chip to ensure that all of them cooperate against Diddy. Because obviously, so Diddy is going to be looked at as like kind of the head of the organization, and maybe his assistant is the number two. So they're going to do everything in their power to ensure that they get successful prosecution against him. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they haven't already either A, brought her in, or B, made her a target in the investigation to some degree where she's cooperating, or they're letting her know that you can be charged too. So they're definitely going to have these people ready to go and testify in this situation.
So, can you imagine how he said about this? His baby mama is cuffing Diddy through his dirt, bro. That's some messed up shit, bro. This baby mama. That's wow.
Well, if I'm 50, we have to remember the timeline. So 50 goes on his rant after it's being known that she's mentioned. What does she do? She actually accuses 50 Cent of forwarding her.
Yep.
Like, let's be clear. What 50 does? Okay, he files a lawsuit. At first, she didn't delete it. Then she deletes the post. Supposedly, and I can Google it, I think 50 is not going forward with the lawsuit, particularly for defamation, which we all know, if anybody knows in history, You lie about him, he's going for that money. But here's the bigger point that he might have to play, and I guess this is where I'm asking. If she's either a witness or a potential partner in Diddy investigation slash, right? I think what Diddy and most men would find the biggest win is not suing your baby mama who's broke without you paying her for defamation. The best thing would be showing to family, hey, maybe I deserve this.
Damn.
My baby mama is a sex worker who's named in this indictment federally. And look, is that a play?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we all know that it's a lot harder for men to get custody of their children in family court, but showing that she's being a subject of or indicted in a federal sex trafficking case is absolutely going to swing it in the father's favor, especially someone like Diddy who has the resources to take care of the kid. So yeah, I mean that's definitely a play.
Yeah, man. Yo, listen. So they're saying tomorrow. Yo, I'm wondering what this is that. So I also threw this into the air. I wasn't reacting. So if you listen to some of the other lawsuits, they try to say, like, even a few lawsuits are like, oh, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, but they were trying to bring in Dustin Combs. Is it possible? And what do you think the odds are that any maybe additional indicted people end up being family, as opposed to I could see like maybe a worker like, hey, your job was to get the bitches here, whatever. But if his sons, even one of them, I don't think even though Combs is a civil case, but if any of them gets criminal, how does that?
I mean, it's possible if they assisted their father in any way. I mean, some of these charges seem to be kind of old, so they might have been children when it went down. But it's definitely possible that his kids can get wrapped up in the indictment as well. What I predict is more than likely, Diddy and probably some of his closest associates were indicted in this one. We'll have to see if any of them are taken into custody. But obviously, he was the main guy that they were focused on getting, arrested right away. So, we'll only know until tomorrow. I mean, he's going to have initial appearance in front of a magistrate tomorrow morning at some point, depending on whenever they have wherever they do the initial appearances or whatever time they do them. But typically, in a lot of places, it's in the morning at the district court.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What if Diddy's, well, this is what I've kind of heard out about, but what if Diddy's son, the guy goes over to the crib of Underage? And when you're over there, maybe after a couple days, things happen. Will they be considered accomplices at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, they're inviting underage girls over.
Hey, I know a girl that talks about being there for a couple days. She's over the age. But I'm just saying, like,
Then that's gonna be
or not.
Yeah, I mean, if the thing is with the feds and human trafficking, when the kid is under 18, it's automatic. It's like a slam dunk. It's easy. Once they're of age, then it becomes tougher because now you got to prove certain things.
But what if these kids are underage too? Like, is that okay?
Oh, you're saying like his kids being underage and helping him?
Yes.
Oh, that's a good question. So would he get in trouble for that?
Yeah, what do you get to the kids if they're underage too as well?
There's probably a state charge for that, like child neglect or something like that. But at a federal level, I don't think the kids, if they're underage, like they're not. The feds really stay away from prosecuting juveniles. They try their best not to. It's very difficult to prosecute a juvenile. The federal level, is.
Yeah. But this is, it's clear. It's clear.
New York tomorrow and like go sit in the courtroom if you can. Initial appearance. You should.
Well, so you tell me. So this is a skill case. Is it possible that is it going to be an open courtroom? Like we don't know. Like damn.
It is. So everything in federal court is open unless it's like a FISA court. No, it's going to be open. We just got to figure out. I'm going to look right now on Pacer and see. Obviously, the case is sealed right now, but they're going to unseal it. It's just a matter of like figuring out when they do initial appearance.
I looked on case isn't which I'm guessing is It's if the initial indictment isn't there, just but there isn't a case that originates from last.
Yo, we dispel this myth, bro. They're saying that we went to Diddy party, which we did not. Please tell them, bro.
Hell nah, no. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's like this is where we're gonna get like so much more information from this indictment. But by the way, and still continue off of the thing. I also want to ask Byron is like, this is we see all the time in like these gang or sometimes RICO cases with we see maybe sometimes an indictment, then we see a sometimes. Do you think that whatever indictment that gets concealed on, that's it? What he's like, right? Or are they still maybe trying to cook up something that they can try to hit him with, or whatever we see on Sealed tomorrow? That's gonna be the mountain that he has.
Yeah, no, they can absolutely do a superseding indictment. They did it for R. Kelly. And they did a superseding indictment for him, I think, later on. And for the audience that's wondering, a superseding indictment, guys, is nothing more than you get them indicted right by the grand jury the first time, and then you can come back. And I know 6ix9ine did a superseding indictment. Let's say during the course of the investigation,
they added the niggas who kidnapped.
Exactly. So you can come back and you can do a superseding indictment and charge other conspirators or add charges to it. You can meet with the grand jury again. They do another meeting. You indict them again, and you add more charges or add more charges.
Hey, this is gonna sound like a ridiculous question. I'm like, ballpark on this. Me, classic pocket wild because what are we thinking of? Like, I look at the raids. You gotta think of manpower. We convened the grand jury for like 2 months. This is Diddy. What do you think the feds are in terms? Obviously, like we're talking about budget here and resources, but how much do you think they'll put behind this case?
A couple million easily, bro.
Really?
I mean, to do a wiretap, to give you guys kind of an idea, to do a wiretap for a month, right, costs about $50,000.
Really?
So, and that's just a wiretap, right? But but it's very expensive to run an investigation between, surveillance, doing warrants, going out and interviewing a lot of these witnesses that probably aren't in New York City. You have to go out to other places to interview them. And obviously, with a case like this, as a case agent, I want to make sure that I'm out there to do some of these interviews. They spent, doing surveillance, tracking his assets. That's the other thing too. They're probably going to try to identify someone like this. They're going to identify his real assets for forfeiture, right? What they can and can't take. Doing the search warrants where they did a multiple search warrants. They did one in Miami and they did one in LA at the same time, simultaneous search warrants. The amount of coordinating between 2 different field officers to do it, actually 3 field officers, because New York ran the investigation. You have to send a collateral case to Miami, then you got to send a collateral case to LA. So off rip, I already know that they got 3 open investigations on Diddy in 3 different jurisdictions and 3 different field offices, and that's 3 different AUSA's offices that are dealing with it as well. Because you have to get search warrants in those jurisdictions, which means you have to go to the United States Attorney's offices in those different jurisdictions. You can't write a judge can't give you a search warrant in the Southern District of New York for a house that's in the Southern District of Florida. You need to go to a judge in the Southern District of Florida to get that warrant signed. So that means more than likely a Miami agent had to start the affidavit down here, unless the case agent flew down, but he probably did. So, yeah, man, we're millions of dollars. What was that, sorry? Oh yeah, dude. For a case like this, they were probably flying all over the country to interview witnesses and everything like this, because this case is what I would call like more of a historical case. So it's going to be heavily reliant upon witness testimony, which means you got to track these motherfuckers down, find out where they're at, interview them, do multiple interviews, make sure you get the story straight. You're preparing them and everything else like that. So, it's going to be tough. And then obviously they're doing great. They've had the grand jury convene for months now for this particular investigation, bringing witnesses in, right? Because we know that they've had this grand jury open now for a few months. And I assume that was predominantly to get a lot of these witnesses in to give their testimony so that they can get a true indictment.
Hey, I'm gonna be a little bit possibly. Okay. Diddy could possibly probably wiggle and squeeze. Hey, got a bigger business. Hey, I heard about my boy Sean Carter, Jay-Z, Jigga Man. I seen that. But anybody, like this, somebody else that day, I could be like, I could throw somebody else under the bus for you to get me out of this shit. Hey, you ever heard of Clive David? Like, do you think that possibly the feds will be down to say, hey, Diddy, I think you give us a bigger fish? Or are we saying, nah, Diddy's a big fish enough? It was a crazy thing.
Sure. And I can explain this because this is kind of a more nuanced when it comes to performance and, hierarchy and stuff like that. So typically when you open up a case, right, you open up a case under what's called a file title, right? It's going to be your main target and then et al., right? Which means basically him and whoever else is involved. Guarantee this case is probably Sean Combs et al. He's the main guy, and then everyone falls underneath him, right? If you look at the 6ix9ine case, it was Mel Murder was the top guy.
Oh yeah, no, actually you're right. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. His real name, I forget his real name, Jamel or something like that. Mel Murder was his name, but the case title in 6ix9ine's case was Mel Murder. So this is how it works when it comes to informants. So I'll give you guys kind of I think your audience here. If you're going to cooperate with the government, you're going to cooperate, you're going to be an informant, etc. You better not be the fucking top guy, because more than likely, when you're the top guy, they're not going to cut you a deal because you're the file title, you're the main dude. Unless you have some crazy fucking person that you're going to give up. Maybe it's a dirty cop, a dirty agent, some shit like that, not a dirty politician. It's very unlikely that you're going to get time off when you're the file title. Now, what I will say is, and this is why 6ix9ine got such a great deal, 6ix9ine was what I would call like the sweet spot, right? He was in a position of power, but he wasn't so high up where he couldn't necessarily work a deal, but he was also not so low where he didn't know the inner workings of the gang. Since he was the rapper and the guy that made the money, he was in the right smack dab in the middle where he was rubbing elbows with all the top dudes, so he knew what was going on at the upper echelon, but at the same time, he knew the guys on the lower level, he was able to give information on them. That's why he was able to give information on, was it Kuda, right? Kuda B, and get time off despite him giving an order for him to go shoot a chief. And he was also able to give information on the guys that were above him, and that knocked off his sentence significantly because he was in the perfect position since he dealt with the money. This is typically what ends up happening whenever you're doing a criminal investigation. The guys that deal with the money almost always are some of the best informants because they're dealing with all different components of the organization, because when you're the financier, you got to deal with everybody. So he was in that great spot to get people above him and below him. But when you're the top guy, it's very difficult to get a deal and get cooperation points because you're the file title. Unless you're able to give like some extraordinary target, corrupt individual who's in a position of public trust, it's going to be very difficult for you to get time off.
By the way, you guys that's posted on DJ's Twitter account says USA David Williams, which is the U.S. attorney. He said earlier this evening, federal agents Sean Combs based on indictment filed by the Southern District of New York. We expect to move to a city indictment in the word. By the way, here's the thing. I was saying this, and shout out to my boy Aiden. I know Aiden. He's live right now. I think it's his top. And Uzi supposedly said that one of his boys went to a Diddy party and they invited him to Diddy's room, where I guess Uzi's friend believed that. I'm sorry to be bringing other people's names into this. He says Trigger Trey, aka Trey Songz, was straddling and sitting on Diddy's lap.
Oh.
I could say something about a Diddy party right now, but I don't know the rules of the game if I'm allowed to say it.
Say it. You'll be okay.
One of my boys, a social media influencer, this was early back in like 2018.
What's one of your boys?
I'm not gonna expose him because he said some Bible shit, but he was at a Diddy party and they invited him to Diddy's room. He walks in, Trey Songz was sitting on Diddy's lap making out with him, and they asked him if he wanted to join.
What the fuck?
No, ain't no way.
They're all gay. They're all undercover gays. I promise you that. I promise you that.
That is crazy.
I could say something.
Wait.
That is crazy, man.
Yeah, what the fuck?
I don't know what the hell's going on.
Trick or treat, man.
Yo.
Stop tricking, bro.
Okay. So, how do you draw the line? I want your investigator hat on. How do you draw the line between, okay, this here's the thing. There's been a lot of, it's so funny that half of these kids love Diddy Party. And then you hear something like, oh, you see that, whatever. It's like, Diddy Party is like, always been. If you're an investigator, how do you draw the line between, oh, okay, this is just some harmless fun shit, or maybe not harmless fun shit, but shit we shouldn't, spend time or spend our energy or resources trying to like hunt down versus this is the true crime that's happening here. Like, how do you pick that out? Because it appears that Diddy was, he was nonstop. Like, he was on some
no, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing, right, and I'll tell you this from me wearing that hat, like you asked before, keep your investigator hat on. This is gonna sound very fucked up, but I would only go after shit that matter from a prosecutorial standpoint, what I can actually prove, right? And some people might say, oh, well, that's messed up, man. But the reality is, at the federal level, you have a higher threshold to prove a case and get prosecution and prove it guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, the feds don't lose for a reason because they take their time and they go after the things that they can actually prove. So in this situation, some dudes, doing some questionable activities, etc. Is that going to be a sexy to an AUSA a lot of the times? Probably not. But if you got a female victim who's underage and she's saying that, hey, I was assaulted and I was GR'd, right, by a group of men, well, that's going to be a lot easier to tell to the U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecution. And at the end of the day, guys, right, getting your case accepted by the AUSA's office for prosecution is not as easy to do as people think it is, because they have a lot of discretion what they take and what they don't take. So you need to go after the things that are tangible, the things that you can prove, and the things that is going to get their attention.
Yo, ain't no way you believe that, bro. What? You believe that? Trace that? No way, bro. You don't believe that, do you?
I'm not getting started, but I think I do have to.
Yeah.
And the only reason why, by the way, I'm gonna expound before anybody say some weird shit like black is it. No. I'm gonna be honest with you. Sexually, I've heard many things about many people in this industry. And a lot of them happen to be sex offenders. So there's I never want to throw nobody under the bus. I will never want nobody. But Trey Songz is a very, very there are conversations about him. I won't say legal, but conversations about him into different things. I'm not saying he's homosexual. I'm not saying anything else. What I'm saying is that when I hear sexually explorative conversations mentions Trey Songz or Diddy, I'm not gonna be like, this is the first time I'm in it. So right. I can't jump out and be like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Real quick, I just want to tell my people we got like 13K on YouTube. Guys, come on over on Twitch, twitch.tv/FreshFit. We're trying to build that thing up, as y'all know. Twitch.tv/FreshFit Podcast. We're having a discussion with Ak, obviously, on this situation, which Ak, you're asking some really good questions here. You're like really making me kind of go back in time, like, okay, what would we do in this situation? But I think it's very important for the audience to know, like my prediction here is that they wouldn't have pursued this case so aggressively and done the multiple state search warrants, seize all the items, convene the grand jury. I predict that they're probably going to have anywhere between 10 to 30 different witnesses. They wouldn't have done all this and then go ahead and use the RICO statute, which I predict is what we're going to see in the grand jury indictment tomorrow, had they not been sure that they got this guy dead to rights. I predict that Diddy's going to have to probably take a plea deal. I know that he's, liquidated a lot of his assets so that he can go ahead and fight this case, because not only does he have this criminal case, but he also has a multitude of civil cases going against him. I think this Danny Buchanan chick literally just did a civil case against him recently for sexual assault. So,
by the way, I also, I'm hoping this is like video.
Yeah.
There is 2 individual sent over documents and I'm not going to publish them or give them free light, but in this mention right here, they have served Diddy 2 other individuals with notice to file lawsuit. It's like a, hey, we're going to file a lawsuit, or we can start sending. And there's people, there's 2 individuals currently who are at that point, and that's about.
And everyone's gonna come because they notice now, especially now that he's gotten arrested. Like, I would not be surprised if he doesn't get served with a few more of these, because what they're gonna look at it like, okay, he's not in a position to fight these cases because he's gonna obviously allocate most of his resources to his criminal defense team. So he's gonna be more than likely willing to kind of play ball and give us what we want, $1 million here, $2 million here, blah blah blah. So I definitely predict that he's gonna, even more people are gonna kind of come out the woodwork and try to sue him civilly to get a quick payout, because he's not gonna have the time or the ability or even resources to fight this stuff in court in a civil case.
Okay, let me do 2 scenarios. First scenario, if you're looking at this, and obviously this goes into criminal law, so you have experience there, but is it something where you might be like, hey, for all the civil cases, you guys get pushed to the back burner, everything goes from criminal, and at worst, if it gets to be too overwhelming, as long as be or at least try to utilize as much as possible. Remember, these are always fine.
So you're asking me, like, as a former investigator, like, what would we focus on the criminal case?
No. Well, that's why I said I'm asking you to do almost. Like a strategy. If you're getting, what do you do? Like, hey, both the civil cases, let's focus on
harm to the criminal defense police. I would allocate all my resources to that, because if you go to jail, you're fucked, right? And he's looking at very serious time here, guys. If he could die in prison if he's convicted of this stuff, I know they gave R. Kelly 30.
Oh, okay. Oh, by the way, you break that down because what is and I said infinite life sentence. I'll do this age now. You can tell me how it's off the top of your head with some of these things that we've predicted, like old potential penalty, but Diddy's age, he's currently 54 years of age. He's gonna turn 55 in literally 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from now, actually 2.5 weeks, he's going to be 55. No, actually, no, I'm wrong. It's a month.
Yeah. I predict that he's going to be facing a significant amount of time here where he can die in prison, man. Either. Like, they gave
over 10.
I predict if he's found guilty, let's go with this. Let's go. He goes to trial. Now, for those that aren't aware, when you go to trial, 90% of cases, right, we almost always plead out. We almost never go to trial. But if you go to trial, you force the government to prepare for a trial. You're going to probably deal with the higher end of whatever sentence, the charges that you're getting hit with come with. So if he goes to trial and loses, there's a very high likelihood he'll get easily somewhere between 20 to 40 years, right? If he goes to trial for this. If it's what I'm thinking, racketeering, sex trafficking, etc., yes, so low end 15, higher end 40, easily, right? If he goes to trial. If he pleads guilty, 10 to 30 in that range. If he pleads guilty. And cooperates.
I'm looking at some of these things.
And for him to get any less time than 10, he had to give up a fucking dirty NYPD officer, a public official, or somebody big for him to get less time. Because he's the main target. So, anytime you're the main target of investigation, it's very difficult for you to get time reduced because you get hit with a sentencing enhancement called leader organizer of the organization.
People with Jay-Z.
I mean, he would have to give like significant stuff that leads to an actual indictment.
So
He'd have to
it's-
real
so
evidence.
from what we know, the federal correct me, when it comes to federal, charges and they have these mandatory minimums that's unlike other states where the only way, at least from my knowledge, they could go below would be if you have say a 5, and that's the scarlet letter, which means
Proper letter, yep.
yes, you can queen for a day, whatever the case is. 6ix9ine had a 5K1 letter that allowed the judge to go beyond, because 6ix9ine was facing, if we were talking about conspicuous on some of these days, he was facing like 46.
Explain what a proper is in a 5K. So I've done a million of these, right? So a proper, for you guys that are wondering, it's also known as a safety valve in drug investigations. Basically, the individual's typically been charged or whatever it may be, and they have information that can be beneficial to your investigation that can, lead to other arrests, whatever. You bring the individual in, they sign a proper letter with their defense attorney, and what happens is they can give you information where it can incriminate them, but it can't be used against them. So they can totally tell you whatever they need to tell you, unless it's like a very, very serious crime or violence or whatever it may be. But most of the time, everything is kind of, on the table. You're protected. You get almost full immunity for a day. And you're able to kind of just say whatever you got to say.
By the way, it's called queen for a day. Usually, on a layman's term.
Some people call it queen for a day, king for a day. That's also another term for it. But it's 5K, proper, safety valve, all generally the same thing with little nuance differences. You come in, you sit with the agent and the prosecutor, and then you're there with your defense attorney, and you provide this information, you sign the proper letter. However, the deal goes out the window if you do one or two things. A, you lie, right? That will mean that it's defunct, and then they can actually charge you for those crimes. And then B, you need to provide substantial assistance. They use the term substantial assistance to the government in the course of the investigation. I'll just spell it out for you guys. You pretty much need to fucking get help and get other arrests. Yeah. And put other people in jail. So, can Diddy get a 5K letter and a proper if he has information on other individuals? Absolutely, but the government has to agree to even do it. So he's got to have information on something that they give a shit about, where they feel that it's worthy to give him a proper. Because if they give him a proper, he can kind of say things and they can't do anything about it.
Hey, by the way, I wanted to explain this. Not necessarily fully doxed. Okay, this is my man, and I don't know if you want me to say his name, but you guys know who he is. This is 6ix9ine. I mean, I think he's in the Discord. I see my boy right. This is 6ix9ine head security during when everything happened. He says, "Yo, bro, I was there when all the trucks were surveilling. They followed us everywhere." He said they basically stalked us. By the way, keep in mind, this is the time where the feds had picked 6ix9ine up first. They pulled him into a meeting. They say, "Hey, listen, we have information that you might be targeted and you might be possibly attacked by other members of the gang who want us to give you protection." And that was almost like a soft way of trying to see.
So here's the thing. I actually did a whole talk on this on my Fed reaction, and actually I'll give it to you. Even so.
Oh, and by the way, the last thing, and I'll go over the other. The last thing he said I was there during the hits and everything, and he says he knows for a fact he tapped his phone too.
All right. Good. So let's go ahead and go through this, right? So I actually know this very intimately, right? Because at the time, right, when I was working for the agency, I had a Chinese organized crime case, and I went up to New York and I actually met with some of the agents from the HSI New York office case, HSI New York, and this was right after they had picked up 6ix9ine, and I kind of figured this out from talking to them, and then also I worked in the HSI New Haven office, and I knew agents there as well. So here's a story with this situation. 6ix9ine was going to go to the casinos in Connecticut. For those that are unaware, we got Foxwoods and Mohegan, right, which is over in Eastern Connecticut, right? And at the time, the feds were listening to, or HSI, they were listening to, if I'm not mistaken, Mel Murder's phone or Jim Jones. They were listening to somebody.
Yeah, I think it was Mel Murder who spoke to us. Yeah.
There you go. So they were listening to Mel Murder's phone, and I know this from doing Title IIIs. One of the things that you must do if you hear this on a Title III, if you hear violence going to occur, you have to notify the individuals whose life is threatened if you listen to it on the phone. Now, obviously, this sucks because now you're kind of disclosing that you might be having a wiretap, right? So you have to kind of go about it in a creative way to not disclose it. So,
wait, hold on. So, and by the way, that infamous call, it was a conversation, and I won't play it here, but the conversation, Jim Jones, I believe, told Mel Murder, you have to supervise. So as a federal agent, how do you know that means the super violate means what?
Yeah, I mean, you super violent, you already know. You listen to that on the wiretap, you're like, okay, this is a threat against his life. Because at this point, 6 9 was kind of on the outs with them. I think he had just
all the way on. He just did a Breakfast Club interview saying that by himself, recorded lyrics, saying he don't need nobody.
Yes. So he said he fired his whole crew, etc. Now, what a lot of people don't know was he was actually planning to go to Connecticut, right, and go gamble at the casinos. Now, from an agent's perspective, this is a fucking nightmare, right? Because on one end, you're listening to Mel Murder's phone, the main target of your investigation, and you literally heard a credible threat against Tekashi's life. So you have to go notify him. So what did they do? They go tell him, look, bro, there's a threat against your life. I doubt that they told him that we're on a wiretap and the other. So they're like, look, we got information that there's a threat on your life. We need you to do X, Y, Z. 6 9 being the rambunctious person he is, he says, no, fuck that shit. I don't need job protection. I'm like, fuck that. I'm a rapper. Like, I can't be seen with y'all. This is a career ender. Fuck that. Right? And obviously, he had a plan to go to Connecticut to gamble at the casino. Now, from an agent perspective, there's two things you can do. A, you find a way to get him arrested to protect himself from himself. Or B, right, you let him go to Connecticut, and you have to maintain surveillance on him the whole time to make sure he doesn't get fucking killed. Well, for those that are unaware, in Connecticut, Mohegan and Foxwoods, it's on sovereign Native American territory. So now,
wow, what does that mean?
So it's run by the tribal police. They have their own like law enforcement there.
Does the feds see that?
Well, this is where it gets. So this is the thing. You can go in there, of course. Obviously, you're a federal agent, but you now have to notify the tribal police that you're going to be there. You're going to be conducting the surveillance, etc., and kind of the situation. Feds don't like to notify the state and locals if they don't need to, and especially on a high-profile case like this. Now, what makes this even more of a nightmare is the New York field office now has to go into what's called a different area of responsibility. Mohegan is going to be considered, Mohegan, Stein, Fox, etc. That's going to be covered by HSI New Haven and HSI Hartford. Well, I'll tell y'all right now, those are two small field offices, maybe 20, 30 agents total in the state, right? They're not going to be able to effectively cover this guy on surveillance, and you got to take HSI New York agents and follow him as well. So that's a fucking logistical nightmare to not only follow 6 9 all the way to Connecticut and make sure that he's safe, but now you got to notify the tribal police to let them know, yo, we're going to be in your AOR doing surveillance on this individual, blah, blah, blah. They're like, man, fuck this shit, this is a nightmare. And if something happens, God forbid, there is a shootout, some bloods or anything else like that, follow him to the casino, and there's a shooting and anyone gets hurt, and the feds know about it, bro, that's a fucking PR nightmare. So, like, you know what? Fuck this shit. We're just gonna arrest him. That's why if you look at the indictment, it's kind of right. When they went ahead and picked up 6 9 and all these other guys, I think they kind of picked them up to well, obviously he was involved in criminal activity, but I think that's the strategy was to arrest him later on. But they pick him up. They have to save him from himself. That's my.
So okay, wow.
Yeah, you got some instinct here.
No, we love it inside. I want to ask you this question, and I think this is probably in the minds of everyone watching the thousand watching. With guys, fish, I come in, also fish, I officer, work diligence and how investigating when we have arrested on Diddy boys tonight. What do you think tonight? Because here's the thing, we think of Diddy as take that in the mouth, bougie, like yo, you got the Star Island crib, you got the $60 million crib in motherfucking LA, he has the private jet. So what is tonight like? And again, I don't know if you're familiar with like necessarily New York, but like what is it like having somebody who the media is clamoring to know details, but he's gonna be probably spending, I would hope, or not, I would probably guess he's the night tonight in jail. What's tonight like as an agent? What's tonight like for him? What conditions is he in? Is he actually in a cell? Is he handcuffed? Or is he chilling in a room just kind of eating, you know what I mean? Eating, potato chips and just kind of watching this while it's going on? What's tonight?
This is what I think. Okay, so this is what happened. I guarantee this is what happened. He gets arrested, right? Either by the case agent or people that are watching him on surveillance. They take him to the New York HSI office, bring him into the interview room. The case agent walks in, hey, look, these are your rights, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to talk? More than likely, I'm willing to bet he's going to say, no, I'm not talking without an attorney present. At that point, the case agent can kind of decide if he wants to let the attorney come in and they can have the discussion where he says, fuck it, we're going to book him in. They probably took him to one of the federal facilities. I think there's one in Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken, FTC Brooklyn or something like that. Drop him off there. They're probably going to put him in custody for obvious reasons. He's going to be by himself. The case agent's going to probably get all his stuff together and be in court tomorrow morning.
I'm sorry to cut you off because like these details matter because sometimes like for example, right? Like there's no proof that Trump actually got put up, right? He takes like almost like a selfie, like in the public, like what's happening is Diddy getting treated like the rest of these motherfucking citizens in New York. Is he getting cuffed in the front? Is he getting cuffed in the back? Is he getting put in the car? Is he getting put in a paddy wagon? Is he getting put in a plane? On marked car? Like, what do you think this is looking like? What's the purpose like for a billionaire?
I'll tell you exactly how this went down. So they arrested him at the lobby. Hey, look, man, we got a warrant for your arrest, etc. Probably cuffed him in the front, walk him out quietly, right? They're gonna have an unmarked part out there ready to go. Put him in the back of the car, drive him over to the New York office in New York City, for HSI. Obviously, I'm
I hate to cut you off, but I like to get your name first. Okay, we know Diddy's being flanked by security. It's that third. Are they showing up with a little bit of force? Because you never know. You might have two arms.
They tell security, fuck off. We got an arrest warrant for him right here. Get the fuck out of here.
Okay.
Security can't do
so security can't follow. It's going to be a stand down. Let's do this quietly, or this could be embarrassing.
Exactly, right? And I'm assuming that's how you would go about it if you want him to cooperate and talk. That's what I'm saying. Like me, right? If I'm the case agent, I'm gonna have my guys approach nice and quiet. Hey, look, bro, because they're in plain clothes. Keep in mind, these are special agents. These are federal agents. They're in plain fucking clothes. Go up to them, look, man, we got a warrant for your arrest. Agent sign, boom. Look, let's just do this quietly. We'll cuff you in the front, or you just walk out with us. We'll cuff you right by the car. Tell the security to stand down. Put him in the vehicle. Case agent's probably either there on scene when he's getting arrested, right, to see if they can get any spontaneous utterances, which is spontaneous utterance is where they say something, right, spontaneously that can be used in court, right, without the Miranda rights being read, which the Miranda rights is the other rights in Islam, blah, 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 all this other shit, which you have to read to them when they're being arrested. They might make a spontaneous utterance, whatever. Oh, fuck, man, they got me, some other bullshit like that. You can use that, right? So they put him in the car. Case agent's probably there asking questions. Hey,
wait, hold on. I know y'all. Wait, you can use a spontaneous utterance without reading the rules?
Yeah, so like when you arrest somebody, this happens all the time when I was on the job. You arrest somebody, right? And you're like, fuck, I knew this fucking asshole got me jammed up. Or, oh, fuck, this fucking dude lied to me. Like, whatever. Like when you get him picked up, you can use that because he said a spontaneous utterance and you didn't ask him no questions.
Wow. I don't think that's well known. Wow. That's very interesting. Okay.
You can, I've gotten people all the time with that where you're going to go arrest them and they'll make some comments like, fucking asshole set me up.
Fuck, they snitched on me. Like you use that?
Yeah, you can use that. You can absolutely use that, man. Yeah. And then obviously read them his rights after the fact before you ask any questions, but you can absolutely use spontaneous utterances when they're being arrested. So as the case agent, you'd want to be there when that happens, or you send two of your guys that you really trust to effect the arrest, and then you ask them, hey, did you say anything? And you pick them up. So they probably bring him out to the car, they want him to cooperate, right? And a lot of the time federal agents are gonna be really cool with you because they want to get a statement, right? They're not gonna fucking throw you to the floor and all this other bullshit. They're gonna do it nice and quietly, not try to embarrass you, right? Their job is to take away your freedom, not your dignity, right? Especially if they want to get a statement from you. They put you in the car, case agent's probably there, reads him his Miranda real quick, asks him some questions, maybe make some small talk, whatever it may be. Then they get him back to the office. Hey, you want to talk? No, I want a lawyer. Okay, no problem. We're gonna start, getting you ready for the U.S. Marshal, right? Because the way it works in the federal system is when you have someone arrested federally, right? Sometimes and we're really getting in the weeds here, but I'll explain it anyway. The U.S. Marshals a lot of times have contracts with local jails to hold bodies for them that are federal custody. Now, in a place like New York City, which is big, they might not necessarily need that. So you might just take them right to the federal detention center, right? And there's going to be marshals there that will book them, fingerprint them, put them into NCIC, all that other stuff, right? And then they'll put them in there, and then the next morning, right? Sometimes it'll be an arrangement with the marshals or the agent himself. You got to go pick them up and then take them to court in front of the magistrate. But in this case, a big city like that, more than likely, they probably have a streamlined system. The marshals probably bring them to the courthouse for you, and then you're just there for the initial appearance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick, so our guy is here, David Green, is real estate expert. So I'm thinking about buying Diddy's mansion. It's for sale right now, bro. It's on the market right now for sale, brother. What you want, nigga? You want to buy this house or not?
Well, I gotta get like so it's an erroneous, I think it's erroneous. Lawsuit filed, but even there was a it was an order that was actually signed by a judge. Basically, it was like an injunctive order, like basically, saying that hey, his properties are subject to maybe the worth of what he has that could be the subject of a civil suit, and some inmate, which I think is bullshit. This inmate filed two things. He filed a lawsuit with Diddy, which, by the way, you guys know what I'm talking about or not? So I can bring it up. Inmate.
I'm not familiar with this.
Yes, so inmate got a default judgment, right, of $100 million in Michigan. Some random inmate. So he got $100 million judgment in Michigan. Obviously, now his lawyer, I guess his lawyers didn't know about it. Somehow they finessed to where they convinced the court that it was served properly. Diddy never heard of it. Now Diddy's lawyers think they're gonna contest it. Not only did they the default judgment, which obviously is going to they did like an injunctive order of that justice. His property himself for like 60 or 70 million. Not so that will be subject of compensation barring the result of this case, which the guy already got a judgment for, which is $100 million. Basically saying until further proceedings, they wanted the judge to block that or any potential. Obviously,
I'm not familiar with that. I know you said you had two questions though from before. I know Fresh literally detracted from what you were trying to ask. What was the two questions you were asking?
Okay.
I was trying to see how the marshals take the guys, how the feds would pick them up, try to get an interview, talk to the marshals, and then you said you had two questions, and Fresh totally derailed everything.
He's asking me. Okay. So, I think what
real estate question. What the hell? It's got nothing to do with the marshals.
My boy.
Yo, I think a lot of people, even me, I promise, I'm having just even thinking about the situation, the way we look at Diddy, seen, like, even when they raided his crib, they met him at, I've never seen him. Never seen him. Even like how we see the sons or maybe like working. And a lot of people really. So I guess it goes to how certain are you that it's actually in death?
1,000%. He's probably martial custody right now. Or he's talking with the feds if he's squatting.
So I think 100% is in some jail cell in New York City like any other.
Guaranteed. I mean, no, we might even be able to. I mean, I don't know if BOP, not BOP, but yeah, he's definitely either A, cooperating and talking with the feds right now, or B, he's in.
They said that since I work full time, I wouldn't be able to work for them. I was able to do my classes on my own
Broadcast
and take
commercial
all my
break.
classes. Right. When it's in, no more.
Get right back to this live. Congratulations.
Whatever you do, do it.
I pay some bills.
Ask me,
Probably not. He hasn't been committed to the Bureau of Prisons yet. He's a mark. Not even sentenced.
Yeah, I looked into the New York City Department of Corrections. So the popular thing takes place in Manhattan, and usually you see first.
Even pro, right? Because they probably have a contract with the marshal.
Yes, because Casanova at a certain point. I'm not saying initially. At a certain point, you can be able to find it. You can't find it yet. Second of all, here's a simple question. Spoke about how the arrest probably went. Now, you being an agent and kind of like mapping out these things, Diddy's obviously for years, right? What level of force do you go? Because the level of force we saw in Miami and even LA looked like they were ready for, and obviously they defended that. We see Diddy's baby mama said, "Hey, why'd you need all that? Why do you have a gun to my son's head of this and third?" And basically they said, "Well, we hear there's a lot of weapons, and we had to whatever." In this situation, you're planning the arrest. How much force are you doing? And how do you turn?
And the reason why is because if you want them to cooperate and talk to you, you can't go in and fuck them up and expect them to talk to you. So for the arrest, you're gonna go in very, very quietly, very covertly, especially someone like this that has a public image. You don't want to embarrass them. You want to kind of hey man, we're gonna do you solid. We're not gonna cuff you up in front of everybody, right? Maybe they did. Who knows? It depends on how the interaction went. But if I'm the case agent and I want to get cooperation, I'm not gonna go in there and arrest the guy crazy because that could really mess things up. Now, as far as the search warrant goes, because you said that they went and used. So okay, let me explain this because people kind of understand. When you're conducting a search warrant, right, and you're looking for evidence of a crime in a house, right? Depending on the individual, that's gonna kind of dictate how you proceed with doing the search warrant. Now, when you're doing a search warrant, the number one thing that you need to do is you need to clear the house first. Then you get agents in there to actually search, right? So first you got to do the sweep, make sure there's nobody in there. Anybody that is in there, you zip time, get them the hell out of the house, make sure it's completely safe. Then you bring the agents in that are a part of the investigative team and do it. But the people that are going to go in and clear the house is, in this case, it was the SRT, Special Response Team, right? That's their SWAT team. So if I'm the case agent, I'm not going to do I prefer to let the SRT handle it, clear the house, especially a big structure like that, make sure it's safe. Then I send the guys in my group that are helping me with this investigation that know what to look for. Then they go in and start searching it. So it's two different teams of agents kind of that are dealing with the search warrant. So first is the clearing from the tactical side. Once that's done, then you get the actual agents that are involved in the case and have a stake in the case to go in and actually search. So, that's just kind of how search warrants are done, right? And then if you know that the individual might have guns in the house, there's going to be certain people there, or whatever it may be, you're going to actually, you're going to operate with a certain level of, carefulness to make sure that no one's hurt. But after it's clear, you're good to go. So that's what ends up happening. It's always where you want to use a strong use of force to kind of disincentivize anyone to do anything stupid. If you go in there with an SRT team, they're going to be like, oh yeah, fuck that, I'm not going to fuck these guys.
There you have it, man. We're gonna stop it right there. Um, yeah, Diddy is now in custody of the feds in Manhattan, New York. So he would be staying there overnight. They picked him up late this evening. He was at a high rise in Manhattan, New York, and they picked him up in the lobby, so to speak, and took him on downtown, basically, the headquarters or whatever. So he will be spending the night in a cell, or maybe an interrogation room, probably. Or who knows? He might be just talking to the feds. So, but we'll know. Keep you updated on what's going on tomorrow. We'll know something else because they'll probably the feds. I'm pretty sure they're gonna do a statement, read a statement out to everybody. You know what I'm saying? To the world or whatever. So we'll know more information as it continue to update. I appreciate you tapping in. This is Malone TV News, man. Your boy CM the Go 5.